Medibank says criminals have information about its members' medical histories and have threatened to release them if the health insurer doesn't pay a ransom. Unemployment disappoints but is still at a 50-year low. And the Deputy Greens leader is sacked after admitting she went out with a bikie gang boss as she sat on a parliamentary committee looking into bikie gangs. It's Friday, the 21st of October, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Michael, yesterday was one of those incredible days. When you're a journalist, you love days where lots happen. And for about the first half of yesterday, it was just a run-of-the-mill day. And then we got the unemployment figures, 11:30, and from then on, it just got better and better. I love today's show simply because there is so much news involved, not necessarily good news. Fear and greed news is probably how I'd put it.
And the thing is that it's not just kind of in one category either. You've got economics in there. You've got politics. You've got plenty of corporate news. There was just something coming from everywhere yesterday. I agree. It was a cracker of a day, cracker of a show today.
Yes, that's right. I'm sure it will be.
It shall indeed. You know what it's going to make? It's going to make tomorrow's show, the weekend edition, very competitive because it means now that there are a lot of stories for us to choose from when we're picking our biggest story of the week and the most remarkable and our favourite. So I'm looking forward to the competition between you and me and putting our Fear and Greed colleague Adam Lang on the spot and making him pick a winner.
Yes, I agree. I think tomorrow's show will be fun. And Adam Lang is our judge. I would say eclectic type of judge.
Yeah.
Depending on the day.
Yeah. See, he could never be a judge in a criminal court.
Talent show. No, definitely not a criminal court.
No, because that would require you to kind of impose the same set of criteria for judging every matter that comes before you. Every week, those criteria change for us, and that's what keeps it guessing. And one person actually said to us once, it sounds like the competition isn't real between the two of you, between you and me. It is the most...
It is ferocious.
Oh, it is quite horrendous at times, and it can lead to some kind of frosty silences after the show when one of us has snatched victory from the jaws of defeat.
Anyway, worth tuning in tomorrow. That's the moral of this story.
It certainly is. And immediately after the show today, you've got a chat with a semi-regular guest, certainly our favourite demographer on the program, Simon Kustenmacher from the Demographics Group.
He's a great enthusiast. Mind you, I've met a few demographers and Bureau of Statistics people and that. They love it. It's just, numbers are what they're about. And, of course, the census data just keeps dribbling out. And so Simon is extremely excited about that. This time we're talking about skills shortages, work from home, what it means for companies, how Tree and Sea changes aren't quite finding it as perfect as they thought it might be.
There is plenty happening, Sean. Let's get into the main story today. Medibank has confirmed criminals have accessed and stolen sensitive customer data, though it's not clear yet how many of the company's 3.8 million members are affected.
That's right. Medibank has been contacted by a criminal claiming to have stolen 200 gigabits of data. The criminal provided a sample of records for 100 policies, which Medibank believes came from its AHM brand and international student systems. First name and surnames, addresses, dates of birth, Medicare numbers, policy numbers, phone numbers, and some claims data were shared by the criminal. Now, the claims data includes the location of where a customer received medical services and codes relating to their diagnoses and procedures. You can imagine that most Medibank customers don't want their medical information shared. Now, Medibank said the person also claimed to have credit card information, but the health insurer is unable to verify that at this point.
Sean, it's interesting that until yesterday, Medibank had been more sanguine about the breach, even playing down the extent of the attack.
That's right. It had halted trading on the ASX twice, then came back on. And as late as Wednesday afternoon, the company really hadn't said much about it at all. Then Wednesday night, it admitted it had been asked for a ransom payment, but it still didn't really know if a hacker posed a genuine threat. Remember, Optus was criticised by some for not telling the world it had been hacked last month. Now, the telco giant took less than 24 hours to make a public statement. So Medibank took a lot longer than that, and it is under fire for taking so long already.
What was the government's response?
Well, ahead of the Medibank announcement yesterday afternoon, Cybersecurity Minister Claire O'Neill warned that the cyber attacks hitting Optus and Medibank are going to become the norm. She said it's the new world we live in and we're going to be under relentless cyber attack. Later in the day after the announcement from Medibank, she said the threat to release medical information is a dog act, was her phrase. Unfortunately, I think she's right on all counts.
It's a very Australian way to describe it, isn't it? For
a dog act.
For a government minister to describe something as a dog act, but it's also a phrase that people definitely understand.
And pretty apt in this instance.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, how did local markets perform yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 closed down 1% to 6,730 points, led lower by the tech stocks, really. Now, materials, healthcare and utilities also did poorly, while energy companies soared thanks to incredible quarterly reports from Woodside and Santos. More of that shortly. About 80% of stocks went backwards yesterday. Now, Fortescue, BHP and Rio Tinto all did very poorly, as did CSL. That dropped about 2%. Macquarie Group fell more than 3%, while the big four banks were mixed. Lots of corporate news at the moment with the third quarter, the September quarter earnings coming in. Gold digger Evolution Mining fell 7% after flagging its production would ease for the remainder of 2023. Link Group dropped more than 1% after it said it was hoping to sell its troublesome British business, Link Fund Solutions. Fund manager and annuities business Challenger will sell its licensed bank to New Zealand's Heartland Group for $36 million. That sent its share price up about 5%. Another interesting one, Michael Vitamins Group Blackmores, which I'm sure most listeners know, its share price fell 3.5% after it told investors that it had raised the price of its products by up to 8% as it looks to absorb inflationary pressures. Not so much the higher prices that it's worrying investors, it's the fact that it's got inflationary pressures.
And what about international markets?
Well, 2 weeks away from a holiday, so let's start with the Aussie dollar.
Oh, what a surprise.
Yes. There were jobs numbers out yesterday, slightly disappointing. I'll tell you about them shortly. That was enough to push the local currency lower against the US dollar. It's currently trading around 62.5 US cents. Commonwealth Bank, who as of yesterday are no longer my friend because of this next bit of information, they put a note out forecasting the currency to fall to 59 US cents by early next year on the back of a strong US dollar and weaker commodity prices. Moving on to steel, we don't do that often, but the World Steel Association came out yesterday and said it expects demand to fall by 2.3% this year, in large part thanks to China's slowdown. That's bad news for the Australian iron ore exporters, because of course iron ore is the main ingredient to make steel. Oil prices rose over the past 24 hours with a barrel of Brent crude fetching more than $93 US, and an ounce of gold is worth around $16.30 US.
All right, international market report, strongly influenced by your own personal circumstances, but as informative as ever, Sean. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, you mentioned earlier the unemployment rate, which remains at a near 50-year low. It came in at 3.5% last month, but the number of people in a job edged up by only 900.
Yes, the number of new jobs created was slightly below expectations, but when you have such a strong labour market, it doesn't seem to make too much difference. Head of Labour Statistics at the Australian Bureau of Statistics, Bjorn Jarvis, said that employment growth has slowed in recent months, but there are still close to 500,000 people entering employment each month and around the same number leaving. That's a lot of people. The all-important participation rate was steady at 66.6%. It remains near record levels. Hours worked dipped slightly over September, in part because of school holidays, while absences due to illness were higher than normal.
What did the government say about the figures, Sean? They've got a bit of a vested interest, I suppose, ahead of next week's budget.
That's true. When you have a low unemployment rate, you are paying out less in welfare payments, in unemployment benefits. That's a good thing. Treasurer Jim Chalmers yesterday said he thought the jobless rate was low because employers are hoarding staff to make up for pandemic-related absences. He also said it was one of the economy's biggest advantages, the low unemployment rate, at a time of global uncertainty.
All right, a truly incredible story now out of Canberra, Sean, and I mentioned this one at the top of the show. Green Senator Lydia Thorpe was in an undisclosed relationship with ex-biker boss Dean Martin last year as she sat on a joint parliamentary law enforcement committee looking into bikie gangs.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to say about this. I mean, when it came out yesterday on the ABC, Senator Thorpe, who was Deputy Leader of the Greens, was forced to resign from the leadership team, though she will stay in Parliament. Mr Martin had been part of the Rebels bikie gang, And apparently the senator's staff were alarmed about her dating the ex-bikie whilst sitting on the Joint Parliamentary Law Enforcement Committee looking into bikie gangs. Senator Thorpe, in her resignation statement yesterday, said she hadn't exercised good judgment. Probably not. Greens leader Adam Bant was playing defence yesterday, but he's under a lot of pressure. He said that he expected more from Senator Thorpe and she should have at least informed him of the relationship. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Mr Bant's office now needs to explain what it knew about the relationship.
It is an incredible story. Sean, the Victorian government will revive a state body to invest in renewable energy projects and legislate to close all coal-fired power plants by 2035.
Yeah, this is a big story. This would attack two major problems for the Victorian economy, energy transition and power bills. Premier Daniel Andrews said if re-elected next month, the government will take controlling interests in new renewable energy projects to make sure that Victorians own the power stations that replace coal. There will be an initial investment of $1 billion to go towards delivering 4.5 gigawatts of power generation through renewable energy. Now, the old State Electricity Commission will be brought back and become a major player in the energy market under the government's 10-year plan, which will include investing all profits back into the network. If you boil that all down, the government wants to own energy assets, and that's a really, really significant play. Of course, the Victorian government needs to get re-elected next month. Now, the announcement drew immediate criticism from Alinta Energy, owner of the Loy Yang B power station in Victoria, with Chief Executive Jeff Dimery saying the station could keep operating into the 2040s. If you're a company and you expect to be running an asset till 2045 and the government says you're not allowed to run that after 2035, you would be a little bit dirty.
Yeah, I imagine so. And still in state politics, Sean, but switching to Queensland, Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk has promised to build 5,600 new social and affordable homes within 5 years.
Ms Palaszczuk said that the state's housing investment fund will be doubled to $2 billion. Now, the returns from that, which is expected to be about $130 million a year, will then be used to construct more affordable homes. As Simon Kustenmacher talks in the interview straight after the show, one of the best things that government can do is construct affordable housing. If you really want to improve the economy, that's what we need.
Sean, Woodside Energy has lifted its production outlook following a record high in sales in the September quarter.
Yeah, okay, so Woodside sold more than $9 billion, with a B, $9 billion worth of oil and gas during the September quarter. Do you think that's incredible?
That is enormous. That is huge.
Now, it includes a full contribution from the BHP oil business that it bought in Japan. Woodside, so they sold $9 billion worth of oil and gas. The average price for its output is $102 per barrel of oil equivalent. So that's an extremely high price. It was just a massive quarter for Australia's largest energy player. CEO Meg O'Neill said the result shows that Woodside is delivering safe, reliable energy from more diverse sources. Woodside is also investing in new LNG projects as well as hydrogen and carbon capture projects. But for now, the cash is flowing from oil and gas. Its share price rose more than 6% yesterday.
And Sean, fellow energy giant Santos also released a pretty strong set of quarterly numbers.
Yeah, sure did. Its share price jumped 2%. And remember, this is in a really weak market, so it's a good performance after it posted record sales for the September quarter of $3.5 billion. Still a big number. For the 9 months this year, sales are up 86% to nearly $10 billion. Now, that number has been boosted by last December's purchase of Oil Search, the Papua New Guinea-based company.
All right, I love a good airline story, Sean, and Virgin Australia, which is now owned by private equity group Bain Capital, is looking to expand its international flight offering.
Based on international airfares, Michael, at the moment, there's plenty of margin in it, I'd say.
It would seem so.
Chief Executive Jane Herdlecker said the rapid recovery in demand for international travel is more than a short-term sugar hit, and the number of offshore flights will grow as the carrier brings on new longer-range aircraft. Virgin currently flies only short-haul international routes in the Asia-Pacific to places like Bali and Fiji. I say bring it on. I want Virgin competing with Qantas and everyone else on these long-haul flights because what does that do? It reduces the price for consumers.
Is this potentially another Sean-influenced story choice there?
No.
You're not planning an international trip in the next 2.5 to 3 weeks, are you?
No, nothing to see here. Move on.
Move along. Now, former Bingo Industries boss Daniel Tartak faces $440,000 in fines or 10 years in jail over his role in engineering a price-fixing deal on demolition waste services in Sydney.
Yes, this is closer to home, literally, than most people realise. Tartak pleaded guilty yesterday to criminal cartel offences 2 months after he and his former skip bin company were charged by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. The ACCC alleged Tartak and Bingo cut a deal with its competitor Aussie Skip Bin Services and Aussie Skip Recycling to push up prices on skip bins for building and demolition waste, according to The Australian. Now, not that it's self-serving or anything, but I'm doing a renovation at the moment, and the price of skip bins are expensive, but they were a lot worse before when the cartel was operating. The charges came after the ACCC launched an investigation into the price-fixing deal in December 2019. Bingo was listed on the ASX until last year when it was bought by Macquarie. Now, the investigation relates to activity that occurred well before Macquarie's purchase.
All right. Okay, so we have airfares, we've got the Aussie dollar, we now have skip bins. I think you have a personal link to pretty much every story that we're covering today, don't you?
I was trying to get a HSC story in too this week, but
yeah, I'm just amazed you're not a Medibank customer as well. All right, now Sean, in the past couple of years, we have spoken a lot about the buy now, pay later sector for good and for bad reasons. The sale of Afterpay to Block, the aborted merger of Sezzle and Zip, and some big declines in share prices. Yesterday, Zip's share price jumped nearly 4% after announcing a 19% jump in September quarter revenue.
Yeah, I thought it was time for some good news in the buy now, pay later sector. The number of merchants of Zip on the platform increased 70% over the year to 941,000. About 20 months ago, Zip's share price peaked at more than $12. Yesterday, Michael, it closed at 66 cents.
All right, moving on to overseas news now, and big news out of the UK overnight, Sean.
Sure was, Michael. 6 weeks after taking the job, British Prime Minister Liz Truss has resigned after the government effectively collapsed. The Conservative Party will now conduct a one-week leadership election. It comes after an ill-fated tax plan which was abandoned, the loss of support of senior Tories, and huge volatility on financial markets. Ms Truss's opponent last time around, former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, is favourite to get the job, though there's a dark horse, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who in his September valedictory speech alluded to his readiness to serve again if summoned. Media reports suggest he's likely to run. Incredible.
Oh, what a comeback. If that's the case, that is extraordinary. All right. Now, Sean, inflation is the name of the game in global markets, and two major economies recorded big price jumps last month.
UK inflation rose 10.1% for the year, while Canada's inflation rate was 6.9%. Both were slightly higher than forecast. The UK rate really shows the folly of the now abandoned tax cuts in that country, and the Bank of England will be under pressure to keep lifting rates. Canada's a really interesting story. Its inflation rate is pretty similar to Australia's. It's a commodity exporter, like us, and its central bank was slow to move on rates, like the Reserve Bank. But the Bank of Canada, since it started in March this year, has been very aggressive. The official rate is up 300 basis points since they started back in March. Now, we're up 250 basis points, but when you start complaining, think of those poor Canadians.
Yeah, indeed. Sean, nowadays one of the most watched companies on Wall Street is Tesla, and its quarterly earnings disappointed investors.
Yes, they came in below expectations. Now, don't get too upset. They were still $21 billion for the quarter. But that was enough to send Tesla's share price down 4%. It's off 44% since the start of the year. It's a funny company because investors seem less worried about the Tesla issues, higher raw material costs, supply chain issues, rising US dollars, difficulty opening new facilities. They seem more focused on Elon Musk and his bumbling effort to buy or not buy Twitter. Now, Mr. Musk yesterday was very upbeat about Tesla. In fact, he said, it looks like the company will have an epic end of the year. Quite the salesman.
Oh, that is a fantastic word to use. You know what? Actually, that really describes today's program as well.
Epic.
It has been epic. We've covered everything from currency moves and politics and plenty of corporate news. It's been a massive program.
It has been a massive program. It's just been a fun 24 hours, really.
Yeah, it certainly has. And we've got a fun interview coming up. Simon Kustamahar from the Demographics Group. He is just someone so passionate about kind of taking the data from, say, the census and kind of translating it into what it actually means. And he does it so well.
Yes, though he was, and I'm just going to go back to be self-serving again. He was talking about the lack of tradies. This is off air yesterday, and I mentioned to him that yesterday I had a plumber, a builder, a tiler, and an electrician at my house. And he's like, he immediately goes, oh, that's where they all are they? Right. He thought it was quite funny.
Oh, well, it does sound actually like you're about to tell a joke. That you had
a
plumber, an electrician, and a carpenter walked into a bar. I want to know where it goes, but I'm pretty sure the punchline would also be self-serving. All right, that is coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 21st of October, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't miss tomorrow's weekend edition as well. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.